Hello and welcome. My name is Trismegistus, and today we're going to be reading through and speculating about the latest Factorio Friday Facts. So just to note about today's video, it's quite a lot to read through. There will be timestamps in the video description below for you to skip through to the speculation if that's what you're most interested in. There'll also be a time code, hopefully, if I remember to do it, on the screen, showing when the speculation starts. Friday Facts 380, Remote View. Posted by Kovarex and Harusa. Hello, we would like to talk about the remote view changes coming in the 2.0 base game update. This is one of the foundations to be able to talk about the space platform and planets later, so let's get into it. Remote View by Kovarex. In Friday Facts 362, we explained the reasoning for improving the remote and ghost building as it became more important with Spidertrons present. With the introduction of planets and space platforms in the Space Age expansion, the importance of the remote building grew even more. You just can't be everywhere at the same time. The goal is to be able to use remote view for everything you can do locally. The motivation is also to remove as many inconsistencies as possible between the local and remote building, so your muscle memory works almost the same everywhere. Remote opening. In the current version 1.1, you can't remotely open an assembly machine to change the recipe or an inserter to set a filter, etc. But you can use the blueprint trick to do it remotely anyway. This is a similar problem as the remote wiring described in the last Friday Facts. So, we implemented remote opening of every entity. This was only possible for train stops and locomotives in 1.1. This allows you to configure anything in the entity, but obviously you can't just teleport your inventory items there. So this next picture just shows remote opening a passive provider chest. The caption says, notice the ghost picker on the left side in remote view. I believe that's referring to the ghost cursor selection text on the left hand pane. There's nothing particularly interesting about this, it's just illustrating that ability to now open chests remotely. Just as a small incidental thing, there's no Easter eggs on this, as far as I'm aware. This icon, if you've never seen it before, is for the editor view. But it's nice to see these are the two icons for the trains. So on the left here we've got the ramp, and on the right we've got the support. So those are what the icons look like in game. Ghost items. Since we want to allow you to do almost everything, we needed a way to work with items remotely. The biggest motivation that arose from playtesting was to be able to add fuel to stuck locomotives, remove random items from places where they don't belong, and to add, upgrade, remove modules. So the solution is that you can just simply click a ghost cursor in an inventory slot to make a ghost item, which will be delivered to the slot by local construction robots. The same for removal, which makes the Deconstruction cross and orders robots to take it out. We've then got a little video illustrating this. It doesn't have a caption, but it's literally showing what's just been described, where the player is opening an assembly machine remotely. Notice it says again the ghost cursor selection text at the top there, and they're picking a level 2 production module and they're clicking to insert it, and then they're using right click presumably to remove it from that assembly machine as well. One of the things to note is it does have this little ghost icon on the module as it's being inserted, and you can also actually see bot jumps out, sticks it in. Also on the assembly machine itself, it has a little icon now. You've got the extra move, but if you notice when it's being placed in, when the video loops back around again, on the actual assembly machine, you see it's got the little blue sort of, I don't know what you call that, little tab basically to show you it's a ghost placement, which is quite nice. Rotating stuff. In 1.1, you can already remotely change the direction of entities. The problem is that you can do so only by ghost rebuilding the entity, while the R button to just rotate doesn't work, which makes another inconsistency compared to local building. Internally, we had quite a lot of logic related to real direction and future direction, which had to be considered in a lot of places, and it was always bringing more and more problems. There's then a very simple illustrative screen capture from the game that says the rotation order also doesn't give the nice feedback of whether the belt rotates, connects or not. If you've ever played the game and remotely, if you hold down shift and overlay the belt, but that's the only way you can remotely change the direction of the belt. The R key, or shift R, if you've got that muscle memory, I don't, I always just do rotation with R, round. But if that doesn't work, basically. So when you're close, you can use R to rotate a belt. when you are far away, you have to use the shift overlay system. And the point they're making is that this icon that appears doesn't actually tell you, it's fairly obvious in this example, but doesn't actually tell you whether the belts are connected or not. They're also talking a little bit again about technical debt, which they mentioned in the last one, where they've obviously implemented this system with real direction and future direction. So this icon is appearing to show the future direction. Whereas, of course, if they were simply using the blueprint system over again, then it would probably be simpler because it would basically be reusing the exact same piece of code. While solving yet another problem related to this, we realised that making rotation just an instant action might be the way out. It doesn't break the immersion too much and simplifies everything greatly for us and for the player, so we just did that. We've then got another little video just showing the change that they're talking about. Fairly simple example, you've got two splitters that are the wrong way around. I think they're showing the map basically to really emphasise that it's being done remotely. Because the player character might have been off screen and you wouldn't have understood, but they're zooming in from the map and literally hovering over and using the R key, flip the direction of the splitters. So in terms of Easter eggs on this particular video, there aren't really any as such. There is a nice little change to the icons that's happened. So this is just a video taken out as a separate thing. If we just pause it here, if we notice on the mining machines, there's a new icon that is showing out of resources. There's also a little red dot that's always been used to show that, but we've now got a new icon to show there's no resources being available where that miner is placed. Whether that'll then, there is actually a mod that enables auto deconstruction of those. I doubt that that's been implemented, but I think this is just another tiny little quality of life improvement. There may be a Friday Facts talking about all the icon changes that are going to be. So that was just a little thing that I spotted there. Opening ghosts. Once we allowed the remote entity configuration, a new annoying problem popped up. Locally, you might be used to just building an assembly machine and configuring it right away. But with remote building, you had to place the ghost, wait until the robots built it, and then finally you're able to configure it. Surprisingly, it wasn't technically that hard to allow opening ghosts and configuring them. Okay, and we got another nice little video illustrating this point. This is something that is really annoying in the game. It's going to be a lot easier actually now that they've done the robots changes, because what could happen often is that this item you were putting down would get assigned to a bot that was like half the way across the factory, so you'd have to wait for it to be built, or you'd have to go in manually build it. And of course, if you're remote to the entire area, then you're not even anywhere near it to configure it. So you have to mess around with the whole copy and paste thing. But this is going to be such a nice quality of life change. And what they're actually doing in this video, this is adding on a chemical plant to like a crude oil production area. They're then opening a ghost chemical plant. Wow. And selecting the recipe for flamer fuel. I do also like this nice little touch here that it says ghost. It's got a yellow icon and it says ghost. So very, very clear what you're opening. Blueprinting Spidertrons and equipment. Another thing that you couldn't do remotely was building Spidertrons or configuring their equipment. The main technical cost was to add equipment ghosts, so when you blueprint the spider, the robots can install the equipment into the Spidertrons. We've then got another nice little video showing this, for example. The player is putting down a Spidertron. Watch how its feet adjust to terrain. There's always a nice little touch with Spidertron. And they're basically opening a ghost Spidertron. It calls it G-Man Spidertron, which is an interesting little thing. But I say, they plop down the Spidertron as a ghost. It's already, look, you see how it's already got some equipment for configuring. So it feels like this is probably a blueprinted Spidertron. But yes, they sort of plop it down and open it up. And then they add two roboports and take off two lasers. So the Spidertron they've blueprinted is obviously one that is set up more defensively, and they want this to be more of a construction Spidertron. It's going to be so nice to be able to do this. Is my reaction to it. It's just being able to do Spidertrons remotely is just going to be awesome. The extra bonus is that you can put a ghost equipment into your armour now, so you don't have to do one-time orders for things for the armour, which happens much more in the expansion because of quality. Ghost entities on ghost tiles. This is especially important for the platform building, so you don't need to wait for all the space platform tiles to be delivered to the skies and physically built to be able to place ghost entities on top of them. Even outside of this context, being able to build ghost entities on Ghost Landfill was a long time wish of ours and also a lot of players. And again, little video, no caption to it, and it's pretty obvious what's happening. The player is plopping in, it may well be via a blueprint, or they're just copying up a piece of landfill and they're just plopping down the landfill, just copying and pasting what I think is a build for red circuits, and they're just literally plopping it down on top of landfill. This is going to be such a nice little quality of life change. It's such a pain in the bum, particularly nuclear. I think a lot of players, me included, have like a landfill build that they then, it's like a little island that they then put the nuclear on top of so that it has easy access to water. And at the moment you have to have multiple blueprints. From this I think you're going to be able to have everything on one blueprint, and then you have to plop down the landfill blueprint, and then you have to wait for them to build it before you can plop down the new blueprint. With this you can just have the machines that you want built, planned out, and the bots will come and fill them in once the landfill has been done. So it's going to be another super nice little quality of life improvement. Deconstruction. The Alt-D shortcut for a deconstruction planner is part of my muscle memory now, but still, the inconsistency of being able to use the mine button to remove entities locally but not remotely was there. This is why now you can just mine entities remotely to mark them for deconstruction. We've then got a little video showing this in action, and it's a pretty simple thing. Basically, you are zooming into the map and you're using right click, the hold down right click and mine, which is how you can remove entities when you're locally building them. Previously, you would have to use a deconstruction planner. I confess Alt-D is not part of my muscle memory. I would always just click the button. But yeah, the player is basically just zooming in, holding down right click to remove, and then dragging that across all of the rail and the signal there just to remove the entities, mark them for deconstruction. And again, another super little nice quality of life consistency feature. It's the reason we all love Wooby, this sort of thing, because they think about this stuff. And I say it comes from playing the game so much themselves that, they just think, well, why have we done it like that? Why don't we do it like this? Why are we being inconsistent? Let's change it. And you wouldn't get that with a lot of developers. I guess, to be fair, a lot of developers don't have the luxury of time, etc. But I say this is one of the reasons we love Wooby. Remote View Context by Coverix. With the planets and space platforms present, we had to make a way to remotely move to these other places. It was just natural to make new buttons on the right as an access to these places. So we then see a screen capture from the game. On the right, it's referring to the map view, basically. So there's over the map, there's a set of buttons, and basically they're saying that they're adding new buttons was the instinct to allow the player to look at different, the different surfaces, the new planets and the space platforms. Which leads to the GUI where you can see a preview of the different places and you have a way to jump there through the view button. They're then showing a screen capture of that as explained. So you would have the space map, and the overview selected here is now this. And then what they're saying is that the idea was that you would click on these different areas and you hit the view button and it would take you to a remote view of that planet. There is quite a lot on this picture that's kind of Easter eggy. We'll come back to that in the speculation. I'm not going to run through it here, but this is basically to say this is what they had planned, and we'll come on to see that they've changed it. But once we started playing, it became obvious that this system is horrible. For example, if you want to check something on a planet and then switch to a platform you have, to do this, you would have to go Planets, GUI, select Planet, View, Close, Platforms GUI, select Platform, View, Close. So a lot of clicking is basically what they're saying. They're also explaining, I think, and we'll probably come back to it, that you see how this is called Space Map? Here they call it Planets GUI. So are those the same thing, or is that different? But they do refer to Platforms GUI, which I think is this separate button. But what they're explaining is that this isn't how it actually works, but these, we'll come back to these as well in the speculation. Also, the preview in the Planets GUI kind of lured you into trying to do stuff in there directly. as if it was the remote view already. So we repeatedly felt stupid for trying to click into the non-functional preview widget. So they're saying that because you had this view here, and particularly this one where you got the player, you might instinctively start trying to move the player around, with the WASD keys, or clicking on the view. And it's just a picture, it's just like a remote picture. You would have to hit view before you were actually able to interact with what you were looking at. So they're saying basically they just found themselves clicking on it and trying to do stuff on this view too often, and so they've changed how they've done it. The solution was to integrate with everything together. Whenever you open the remote view, the map, it always shows the planet's platform selection to the left, so you can use remote view normally and do everything, but also switch between places. So the previous example gets simplified to remote view, select planet, select platform, close. Okay, so this is the new version of it. We will definitely be talking about this later. There's a few little hints and stuff going on there. But essentially what they're saying is when you open the map view, so you hit M, then you will also have this new menu basically. So there will be this new surfaces menu that allows you to switch between the various views. And therefore, partly because you zoomed it out, it's a map view, you kind of know instinctively that it's not one for you to interact on, or that you can interact with it in the ways that you now can with remotely. Before you couldn't properly remotely interact with everything, but now you can. So because you're now into the map view, you just hit M, you've gone into the map view, and you can click between these views and do whatever you want to do. And the point they're making generally in this, Friday Facts is that it's all now consistent. So it's all works the same way. So map view on Endeavours, map view on whatever these planets are going to be called, or on the platforms, it all works in the same way, and you can do the same remote actions wherever you are, which is going to be brilliant. And that's kind of what they're trying to talk about here. But I say we will come back to this screen capture because there is so much on it to talk about. So I've just opened here because I'm sort of aware that the icons may be a little small on the picture. This is the big view, and I say we will come back to this later, but this is a more visible version of that screen capture, just opening the picture remotely. This is the reason why the access to the planet, platform travel and platform creation is in a little bit of an unintuitive place at first glance. It just works way better in the long run. P.S. We use the same strategy for trains, so it is just a glued piece of GUI to the remote view, so you can interact with the world around the selected train the usual way instead of seeing just the map, which is otherwise non-interactable. Just to explain that last little piece there, previously you would be able to view trains remotely via there's a train menu, and you'd be able to sort of click on them. You could also do it via the station, see which trains are connected. So there are a few ways of getting at it, but you would have to click a special button in order to turn it into a map view. You wouldn't be able to just instinctively, and I found myself doing this a lot. You're trying to do something in the view and it's not an interactable view. You have to do it by hitting a map button, and then it turns that into the map view, and you can do whatever you were trying to do. So you might, for example, be fiddling about trying to remove some inserters at a station, and you would it's not the map view, I need to click another button to go into the map view. And they're basically saying now that it is a map view, it is a proper map view, and you can just do whatever you want, which is again another lovely little quality of life feature. Ghost Shader by Harusa. You may have noticed the ghosts in the previous videos looked a little bit different from what you may be familiar with, and there is a good reason for that. Touching up the appearance of ghost entities had internally been haunting our minds since before the base game release. In version 1.1, ghosts are simply drawn semi-transparent with no extra flair. It gets the job done, but you can get somewhat cluttered and hard to distinguish images. As remote interaction plays a major role in Space Age, it was a great opportunity to put my GPU hardware wrestling skills to use. I took it upon myself to breathe some life and clarity into the ghosts. To tint or not to tint? The behemoth biter in the room is the colour change tint. Many entities are only distinguished by their colour, for instance inserters and logistics chests. If the ghosts are tinted, it would be more difficult to tell these entities apart when they are ghosts. However, throughout our testing, it became increasingly obvious that distinguishing the ghosts as a whole from real entities was by far the more important feature. You'd tend to care more about whether it is a ghost or not, rather than what type of ghost it is, and we do have a few tricks up our sleeve to preserve the colours. So we then got another nice little video illustrating this point really well. There's no caption to it, but basically it's the bottom half of the video is real entities, the top half of the video is ghost entities, and you can clearly see now which are real and which are ghosts. It also shows quite well that you can kind of tell, if you're looking closely, what the colour differences are. So they've deliberately used here, they've got a grey assembler, a blue assembler and a green assembler. And when they're in ghost form, you can tell, if you're looking closely, that it's a grey one, a blue one and a green one. The green one's more obviously stands out. Similarly with the inserters, we've got red inserters, so long-handed inserters, green inserters, so stack inserters. We then got stack, fast, long, normal, so yellow. I can't see a filter inserter or a stack filter inserter offhand, but you can kind of tell what there are. But their point was that when they were testing the game, playing with the game, it was really obvious that knowing something is a ghost is more important than knowing it's a grey assembler, blue assembler, green assembler, because you can always come back and use upgrade planners and what have you to do that. And particularly if you're using blueprints, you've kind of designed and built the blueprint, so you kind of know what's going on. So yeah, I kind of agree with that. Just a little note here, it's not really a speculatory thing, but I hope there's the ability to change this for people who are colourblind. Red-green colourblind is obviously one of the key problems, and the game is not particularly brilliant with its colourblind modes. As I understand it, it's difficult for me to know because I'm not. So I've seen that comment that it's a little problematic with the colouring. So I hope there is the ability to adjust this tinting. If not, that it's surfaced well for modders to be able to let you change this colour. I can imagine someone wanting, purple or I don't know, orange or something in order to help distinguish it. And they, it might be a bit garish, but yes, I hope that's an option that you can change it. The anatomy of a ghost. Eager to flaunt the full power of shader magic, we've tried many types of distortion, blueprint grids, hazard stripes, eerie static, jack-o'-lanterns, but ultimately decided on a fairly unobtrusive overlay. Instead of being a simple multiplicative tint, the image is split based on brightness. Each part has its own set of coloured blend modes applied. We can really ramp up the blue factor on the shadows without entirely washing away the midtones and highlights. The second piece of the puzzle is a shimmering distortion. Under normal circumstances, 2D game sprites are trimmed to rectangular bounds. To give myself more room to work with and to avoid clipping, I had to find a way to retroactively stretch each ghost rectangle while keeping the picture on the right spot, ideally without rewriting the draw function of every entity in the process. Furthermore, the previous ghost drawing did not really need to pass along its exact location on the map. In my case, the effect must absolutely stick to the world and not be floaty. It's really dizzying when it doesn't. So we then got this illustrated with a picture screen capture here with a caption that says, "Yellow illustrates the added rectangle margins which allow the texture to distort without clipping." So yeah, so you can actually see the sort of noise function being applied. Basically the yellow part is the sort of extra box that's been put around these to stop them, say, clipping into each other. And basically you can see how they're distorting, the image to give it this shimmer effect. To get the actual numbers to drive our shimmering, I decided to use simplex noise. Factorio map coordinates can get huge on top of me cramming them into whatever spare video memory I could find. The simplest solution is to tile the effect every few chunks. To accommodate that, I had to customize the inner workings of simplex noise and account for the tiling seams. We then got another one of these lovely slidey diagrams that I always really enjoy. And it says, before the update, many entities were difficult to make out. For instance, setting up this refinery remotely would really strain your eyes. So this is the original, this is the current version of Factorio, and this is the new blueprints. The change for me is massive. One of the things I found when I did my blueprint series, my series where I built blueprints, is that when you lay down brick in particular, and concrete and refined concrete, although they're a little better, when you lay down brick in particular under ghost entities, it just becomes impossible to tell what's going on. And when you're having to find things like directions of belts and rail track there, and when you're having all that applied, you're doing complicated things, power lines, etc., you often can't really tell what the heck is going on, and you just have to trust that the blueprint is okay. Whereas with this new one, you can actually see that where this rail is, that this is brick underneath rail pieces, and these combinators are really easy to see, and it's just massively better. One of the things I would say, to be sort of fair to the old system, it was clearly being done in a different way, where they were just desaturating or probably actually just changing the opacity of all the existing icons, whereas this is applying a shader effect to an icon. So if they took the same approach, and this is what I was saying about the colorblind thing, took the same approach, then white would probably work just as well. The colour choice has obviously been picked for partly, I guess, for the thematic reason that it's a blueprint. But I think you could use any colour, and the same principle would apply. So yeah, I massively appreciate the change. There is a little. I'm not going to cover this in the speculation, but there is also another change that's happened with blueprints. Where look at this pipe here. So this is the current version of pipe. And it just literally puts down the existing icon, so it doesn't account for the connection point. So you see here, we've got this, it's not actually connected, and particularly on the machines, it's just the bit of pipe. The corner here is just, a bit of pipe rather than what an actual corner looks like. And so if we flip to this is now ghosting an actual curve. So it literally looks like a blueprint version of the factory, rather than just, putting the icons where the things are. And it should also, it's difficult and this is the point, you can't see these pipes over the thing. But if you look here, these don't look like connected pipes, and now they look like connected pipes. It's just, they do so many, little quality of life improvements. It's just amazing. But at what cost? While the GPU can perform Herculean amounts of operations extremely fast, the connection through which your PC sends those instructions is very narrow. This hologram effect is all fine and dandy, but if it makes the same game choppy, it's no use. Therefore, keeping the size of each instruction low is paramount. Luckily, the standard Factorio draw call had several unused numbers in it for very specific things, such as tree leaves moving in the wind. This allowed me to bitpack all the necessary information in without inflating the size of drawing calls whatsoever. One more thing. Since we now tint the ghosts, we can use it to provide a little bit of extra information to the player. Specifically, the ghosts will change tint when they have been assigned a robot to construct them, so you can tell at a glance if there is a robot on the way and or if you have required materials in the network. So we've then got a little video here just illustrating that exact point. There's no caption to it, but it's pretty obvious what it is. Basically, the player is plopping down a blueprint over the top of some cliffs in a spare piece of terrain. It initially starts off at the sort of darker blue as bots and get assigned, and there is material in the network to build the solar panels and accumulators. They change colour, and you can actually see this is the effect of the tweaks to the bots improvement, the assignment of bots, in that it goes through pretty much in order. And one of the things it does, and you can actually see it filling it in, you have to watch it fairly carefully, but notice at the cliffs, so there are two instructions for the cliffs. There's both build the item and also deconstruct the cliff. And as it goes through, it's clearly going through this array of items, and it's assigning a build. Then it assigns, when it gets to a cliff order, it assigns deconstruct the cliff and keeps going. So it just rattles through, and it's only once those first instructions are done does it come back and say, right, well, there's also then an order to assign to build a, in this case, a solar panel, and it's a bit mixed down the bottom here. So what you'll notice is the colour flicks through, particularly down the bottom here, and it doesn't initially turn bright blue, but it obviously assigns a bot to the cliff instruction. So it does it there, and then it turns more light blue when another bot gets assigned to the build order. So this is these improvements to the bots in action as well. As always, remotely let us know what you think at the usual places. Okay, so firstly I should probably give an overall reaction. It's another one where there's not a lot to say about the thing itself. I mentioned during the record of the video that I'd quite like to see that there are options for changing the blueness. If you're not particularly a fan of blue, or you want a different colour, or that you're colourblind and you need different colours. I hope they surface that. I hope you can just set it in the settings, but if not, that modders can get in there and let you change that colour if you want to. So I really, really hope that that's a something they do. In terms of the change itself, I say brilliant. I've really struggled doing my Blueprint series, as I say, because I like to do that fortress, or did that fortress style of build, and it had a stone floor underneath it. I found those blueprints when I was using them really, really difficult to tell what the hell was going on, because I was doing such complicated things with builds, because I didn't have chests and it's all early game and all that sort of stuff. I found it such a pain in the bum to work out what was going on, and in using them, I would lay things down and then have to relay them down and undo them and line them up, and because I had to separate out the stone brick floor from the main blueprint because it was just too confusing as to what was going on. So it's just such a massive improvement, to be able to lay down the blueprints and opening things, working with them remotely. It's just so good, basically. And the fact that there was this workaround where you would copy, they keep talking about blueprints, but you copy and paste the item, change it, paste it back again. It was just such a nonsense, and being able to remotely operate things just makes so much more sense. And when you think, and this is why they're saying it, why they're doing this Friday Facts now, when you think you're going to have a bunch of planets and space platforms and all this sort of stuff, and if you'd made one tiny little mistake, particularly with a space platform, I think if you've given it some instruction or you've not quite set it up exactly right and it flies off and gets lost, runs out of fuel, all these types of things, being able to fix that remotely without having to get in your own platform or whatever, or however it works, and fly over there and do a thing, or particularly, if there's a transit time for the travel, if you're having to hop into a rocket, go into a space platform, travel across half of your solar system, land, find where you want to make the change, just to make some, adjust a wire or set an inserter to have 10 items rather than 12 items. It's going to be such a pain in the bum that this, I think, was the only solution to it. So, I'm also glad they did confirm at the very beginning all these changes are coming to the base game. So these are changes to how the base game works when 2.0 operates. And so if you don't get the expansion, you're not interested in it, you don't play with it or whatever, you're going to get these improvements, and they really are improvements, and I'm massively happy about all of this. So as with the previous updates, just recently, this is the sort of stuff I love. I love this level of detail, and particularly if you're looking at how the game works under the hood. They're talking about it's not Perlin noises, it's simplex noise in this case, and the bit packing and things like that. I'd recommend going and looking at those if you're interested in sort of underlying guts of the game. Ability to change Spidertrons remotely. This was always bizarre, the whole rotating entities thing. I could see why they did it, but whatever. Getting mining thing, new icons. I hope we get a Friday Facts on that. Again, another super nerdy one for me. Probably not the biggest views on that. So I absolutely love this type of quality life improvement. Being able to remotely open, ghosts and set their recipes. When you're setting up circuit networks, brilliant. You can now open them up and just work on them when they're ghost items. Perfect. Yeah, being able to set Spidertron up remotely, awesome. I'm pretty sure you can blueprint it at the moment, so some of the phrasing was a little odd on that because it seemed like they were saying you couldn't do it, and I thought you could. But yeah, being able to remotely configure Spidertrons is just going to be so awesome, and the fact that carries over into your own equipment grid is great. This one, laying down, blueprinted landfill and then being able to paste on top of it. This, and again, this is going to be slightly better anyway because of the bot improvements. But the way they would randomly fill in, the blueprint, and you'd have to keep going back and keep plopping the same blueprint over and over and over again, so that they built half of it, and then the other quarter of it, and then the remaining, 10% of it, and it would just take ages and ages and ages. And so just being able to slap it on top, and they just do it whenever they do it, and say with the bot improvement, making it better anyway. Just brilliant, just amazing improvement. This one's a bit of a odd one, being able to ghost deconstruct. I really wasn't all that fussed about that, but nice little quality improvement tweak. I did read a few Reddit comments, they got a bit confused. We'll come back to a lot of these because there's like a lot of Easter eggs in this. But I think people got confused that this is how it's going to be, but it's not. What they're saying is that it will just work via the map, so you'd just be doing it via the map. This is just showing how they had thought they should do it, and then they realised, or as they were playing, it was a bit of a pain in the bum. So basically, this is how we'll do it. We'll just use the map, and we'll have a new GUI here that lets us switch between all of those different views. This showing it clicking in. Again, just this, tiny little quality of life improvements that just make the game just ever so slightly better. Just great stuff. Love them. So the first bit of random speculation and interpreting of the Easter egg, shall we say, is about the space platforms and how they're actually going to work. It says in this section here about ghost entities on ghost tiles, especially important for platform building. So you don't need to wait for all the space platform tiles to be delivered to the skies and physically built to be able to place ghost entities on top of them. So that's talking about the space platforms, which we obviously saw in the big announcement, Friday Facts, about the space platforms. When they showed this, they referred to a previous older version of the space platforms code, basically, and the shape of it was pretty much identical to this. I was left sort of wondering, do we actually build these things, or is this it? You build a space platform and that's what it looks like. It looks like this. And this to me seems to be confirming that actually you can kind of build it as big or small as you want. Now whether this is like one unit and then if you built two of them together, this would be built together. But what this seems to be saying is that these are constructed from parts. I mean, they always had to be done like that. But if you're building these platforms, then you are, putting on these grabber arms and the engines and this crusher thing. You're putting them where you want to put them. You're going to be able to blueprint it, But, you can build this however you want to build it, and it can have these little bits going out and how that all works. We've not really had much information about the space platform, so I'm sort of really digging in on this. I'm still not clear whether we're going to get to go into space, whether we are going to get a jetpack and we're able to sort of hover around and, build these, physically ourselves, or whether it's all being done remotely. This whole update is about remote construction. So is this that you just plan it out and then bots or however space works in terms of construction, does it all for you? It would be a shame if we couldn't actually go to space and build these space platforms. One of the things I have been struck is that it's not clear to me, if I'm honest, that we're really going to build in space. There is something that hints that, as in we're not going to build like a space station, basically. I think we will, but they've not really been that clear that that's how it's going to work. Something that hints to that I did sort of spot on these is that in this picture here, and we'll show the blown up version, you notice here we've got this platforms menu and we've got a little icon of a space science there. And this to me basically seems to be saying that you can have a platform that's just floating in space that is your science production platform. Now, it could be that has to move around in some way. Perhaps it has to mine something from asteroids or something like that. I don't think that's how it will work. I think that's a bit too complicated. I think this is basically saying that you can have a static platform in space that does space science and sends that space science to your planet's surface. So the difference I'm making there basically is that you've got a space station, so Mir or something like that we currently have, the international, Mir's defunct, isn't it? But the International Space Station, or used to be Mir, that's a space station to me. The space platform, I thought, was entirely that, and I thought we would have space ships, so special ships that we would build that we would then be able to move between planets, a bit like trains, effectively. So you would have a spaceship that was like a space train, effectively. That does not appear to be how it works. Instead, you just have space platforms, is what I'm interpreting from this. And that platform can either be static and just sat there producing space science or whatever other things we can do, or it can move between different planets and presumably between different platforms as well. And that's what these are showing, basically, that a space platform can effectively be a spaceship and it can travel between planets, or it can be an actual static platform, a space station that does a job for you. So I think that's how it's all going to work. We're not going to get separate space platforms, spaceships, space, stations. We're just going to get space platforms, and we can multi-purpose what we've got, and that we can build them chunk by chunk. So we can say, right, I want it to be this big, and I want it to have this component, and it's got 3 engines on it, 4 engines on it, 10 engines on it, no engines on it. And then we can just, build it however we want, design it however we want. And that we need to launch those components into space, basically. So that's like the big thing that's going on. They do refer to this in the text, this button here, Add Space Platform. So it says, this is the reason why the access to the planet, platform travel, and platform creation is in a little bit of an unintuitive place at first glance. It just works way better in the long run. So that's what they're referring to. If it seems like we can travel via this menu. So I don't quite understand how that works as such. What it appears at the very least to mean, I think, is that you can set the routing for the platforms via this menu. So we've obviously got a button here, Add Space Platform, that is so that's like building a remote train or something, like a blueprinting a remote train. And this is how you build a new space platform. And whether they're all just called Explorer, I don't think they are, because if you notice there's a difference in the how this is done. You see how this has got space and these haven't. So these are separately named, and the player has been able to name them. So if you want to name them whatever you want to, you can. And so this white science one is just named there. It's not been set up as you can only have one white science platform. But so I think this is how it does it. And I say that description implies that that's how you travel as well. So how that works, I don't know. This connections thing is interesting. I think that's trying to replicate or trying to represent what we're seeing here, which is that Explorer 2 is, travelling between these two planets. I think that's what they're showing. There is another possibility which relates to, there's another little Easter egg in these images, which is that it's communication, basically. So you're basically saying that you've built a super radar, or whatever it ends up being, that shows that these planets are connected. Obviously, it could be in any of those possibilities. So one of the things that makes me think that these are perhaps the rockets that are connecting between the things, and this is how we do connection, is that on this set of icons here, we can see all of the science packs. So we've got this new pink one, the orange one, and I can't remember what the other colour is. Is it the yellow one? No, yellow's an existing, gold's an existing colour, isn't it? But we've got multiple different science packs here. And if you look how these are connected round, this is like the science area, I think. I think these are labs. And it's being distributed, basically, the science packs between them. But you see how this it's obviously got an interchange, so they could be coming from anywhere. But certainly some of these science packs, I think, are being brought in by rocket and being sent through this system into here. And I say, obviously, others are going around. But yeah, so I thought that was interesting, and part of why I think that this is a connection system, and that's how you control what's going where. Something that is interesting is on this one here, we have 3 extra icons here. These are the sort of standard icons. Now, obviously, this is being hovered over a space map, and then it says you would click that, and it would go to this view, okay? We've also then got 2 other icons here and here. And the first one, I believe, they do refer to it in the text. Planets GUI, select planet, view, close. Platforms GUI, select platform, view, close. So platforms GUI and planets GUI were separate things. And we have this here, and if you sort of try and interpret that a bit, this is a platform with a rocket propulsion on it. So that is the platform view, I believe. And this is the space map view. What's this? All I can think is that this relates to the connections. So this connections here is this. So why is connections separate to, this, effectively? Is that what it was? And that's why we can't see it here? The thing about that, though, is that we have an icon here, or that icon, the connections icon, is maintained. These 2 are gone because they're now represented in this. But the bit we had that was extra here, connections, appears to be this. So I think this icon is connections, okay? And this also goes to, there is an icon on this thing. I'm going to zoom right in. There is an extra icon for some kind of new building, new construction, right slap bang at the bottom here. Can I zoom in further on that? I can. Right. And if you were looking at that, it could be anything. We don't know what it is. But looking at that and knowing that there's a connections, GUI that we're not really being clued in on. Could that be an interplanetary communicator, basically? And this is effectively the super radar. So this is what allows us. You have to build these. This is what allows us to remotely operate. So it's not a function of radar as such, although it is. I suppose it will be connecting radars. But this is what allows us, potentially, I think, to view the remote planets, because we connect them together. We've built one of these, and you might think, well, what you build it, it's done. Why do you need to track it? Well, potentially you could map, if you think about it, as space lanes that are how the space platforms travel. You build one of those on each planet to connect to all the other planets that you want to. So you would build one of those. I'm saying this is obviously me just really going off on a speculation, but you build one of those and you say, right, that, and you build one on another planet, and you tell them that they're then connected. So this is now connected to planet 1, and on planet 1 you say this is the connection to now this. And then it's how your space platforms travel between, because it says, right, well, there's a connection point, and that is effectively a straight piece of rail, that connects those two planets, and it can travel back and forth. Whether that then allows us fine-tuning of saying, right, well, this is the route for iron to travel, this is the route for copper to travel, this is the route for these science packs to travel. And so you build one of these for each of your your routes, basically, between them. I don't know. I doubt that. I think it's more just planet to planet. So effectively, you would probably end up with 5 of those connecting to all, your planet as the anchor point, and then it has 4 others that connect to the other planets. That's my speculation anyway. And one of the things that is interesting on this, if you look at the size of these entities, I think it's a set of rocket silos. It's obviously very difficult to tell exactly what's connected where, but I think these are rocket silos basically. And I wouldn't be surprised if it could be in fact, actually, I think that's probably the spaceship, is it? Because you've got the bits fallen out of the spaceship, maybe. So I'd initially thought that was maybe these connection things all stuck together, and effectively this was your connection control panel. But looking at it with those blobs now and zoomed in this much, I think it might be just the rocket. But as I say, I was wondering perhaps if that's how you're doing it. So basically, these are your rockets, that are part of this system for communicating back and forth between the planets. But basically then it would be able to launch and say, right, take this stuff to a platform, and then that platform goes to a planet, and then it drops it back off on the planet. And that's how you control it all and how it all works. Because this is all stuff, I think, coming in. So yeah, there's a lot to dig on all of these. This here is clearly showing what resources are available on Endeavours. There is a colour change on the icon, I think. I think that's what this is showing. So we've got small, medium, large, and behemoth spitters. Obviously, the medium is not currently bright red. Presumably that's a tweak that's being done. We're also seeing what I believe means just trees and dead trees. I think those are just icons for generic tree and dead tree. I don't think this is a new resource. I also don't think this is telling us there's some use for trees or anything like that, or because these are obviously the useful resources, and presumably we would get similar icons for the different stuff on the different planets. I think it's just so that you can tell, like I say, particularly this planet might not have any trees on it, for example, and so they would be able to show you then that there are no trees on that planet. Yeah, I don't think there's anything particularly hidden here. There's another bit here about showing the kind of makeup of the planet. So this is Endeavours, and it's got different categories. It's got day-night cycle, gravity, magnetic field, pressure, solar power in atmosphere, evolution factor, solar power in space. It's very difficult to tell whether these are just things that they thought would be useful and do have a use for or don't have a use for. It's very difficult to know whether it could just be colour. There could be no effect of any of these on biters or mining or what have you. They seem to be Earth typical. 9.98 meters per square second is gravity at sea level on Earth. Magnetic field as a percentage implies that it's a Earth relative. Perhaps it's 90% of what it could be. Given now this is the home, it tends to me to suggest that it's comparing it, as it were, to Earth or our home planet, which basically is Earth. And so, because if now this is your home point, that should be your normal, so that should be 100%. So why would you then go as 90%? 90% has to be a comparison to home, basically. And so it could just be for colour and, to give us some, better feel for now this as a planet. But it tends to imply, doesn't it, that, these are different on different planets. And I say whether they have any gameplay effects, we can't know. Obviously, the magnetic field on Earth is a big part of why there's life on Earth. It basically protects us from the solar wind. If you've ever seen, the Aurora Borealis or Aurora Australis, they're basically the charged particles, the charged wind coming off of the sun being funneled around the planet and coming down, because it's basically a bar magnet at the Earth, and it funnels the actual charged particles and they come down at the poles. And if you don't have a magnetic field on a planet, so Mars doesn't have a magnetic field, then all of that radiation just slams into the surface. And so it could be some gameplay effect that basically, a bit like in space exploration, where you're getting solar flares, basically. That could be a mechanic in Space Age as well. But as I say, it could just be like a flavour thing. It could also mean that, it could be an evolutionary thing. It could be that a low magnetic field, because, then you're going to get a lot of radiation, which tends to relate to evolution. It would be a faster evolution rate. So a planet could have a super fast evolution rate, because it has a low magnetic field. Or the other, as I say, it could be that it sterilises the planet, and that's the reason. And there's no biters on that planet because it's just been sterilised. Pressure, why have we been told pressure? There could be all sorts of reasons. Some of the planets, I say, my feeling on this now is that this is like the moon, basically. And so you wouldn't expect, it does actually have an atmosphere, the moon, but you could have basically no atmosphere. And so the only way of getting to it and working on it is with a spacesuit. And that's how that works, and maybe we have to manage oxygen or something like that now. I don't think we do, because I would have thought oxygen would be tagged as a resource if that was the case, but you never know. Solar power in atmosphere is interesting, but more because it has solar power in space. I speculated in another video that perhaps we would have space-generated power. I always thought that was how we would, power the platforms. Although if you look at the video of this here, of course, the actual thing, it does have solar panels on it. So, we always knew, that's not a new revelation that we would be powering things with solar panels in space. It does confirm that as you would, as you have in on Earth, there's more power available in space. And of course, you would expect, depending on what the orbit is, it could, the panel could go behind the planet, that you could potentially use it as a way of generating more power. That it could be, transferring solar power, from space to the planet, which is getting into Dyson Sphere program territory. But yes, it's nice to have confirmation that we'll get more solar in space, so you're not going to have to build mega arrays to power this platform that you've got. Again, we know that this isn't how they're presenting it, but we're seeing some things that could have just been ideas, have no actual bearing in the game, aren't there anymore. It doesn't look like we'll even be able to get at these via the new system. So yeah. So one of the things this is showing is that there are, the 4 other planets. We've seen these in the previous Friday Facts. So we've got, 3 planets there that produce different sciences. And then you've got this 4th planet. I think I'd misinterpreted this picture in particular. I thought this was Nauvis, but it isn't. I knew there were, 4 planets. I had that in my head. But I thought that basically you were bringing these space sciences back to this here, which I thought was Nauvis. But that's a separate planet altogether. Because this is a tech tree, maybe it's saying you have to research these before you can even go to this planet. But then what are you producing on this planet that you wouldn't... Because, we know we're getting these extra science packs. Is there another science pack? Should there be another picture here that is another science pack that we got to produce that is the end game science pack? Or is this hinting at this final story point that basically on this planet, because this looks more like a moon to me, colour of it sort of suggests it's a moon, and maybe this is where we build what is now the end game for the game, end goal for the game of a way of getting home, a teleporter or a faster than light ship or something like that, and that's what you build on this here. Whether it translates to a new science pack or it's something else entirely, obviously I don't know, but I say that's the feeling that I'm starting to get, that we're doing something else on this planet that isn't a new science pack, or that we're just not being shown that there's a new science pack icon as well. This space map view, it's interesting to call it space map. Now you got to remember, we've got, on this view here, we've got space map, which is the planets, and we've got platforms, which is a separate menu. So this is what I was talking about before about, these platforms are the things we build, and these are actual planets. But notice on here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets that we know about. So the Nauvis and 4 extra bodies. We've not been told the names again. I'm guessing that's because we'll get Friday Facts on each one. But there's also another one here, and it's got a Compilertron icon over the top, which is presumably a placeholder. Now, I don't know whether that's a space platform. It's just strange that, why have we got another icon here, another option? Is it just platforms and that's how they did them before and they didn't want to show them to us? But then why is that blurred, basically? That implies that there's something else going on somewhere. I don't think we've been lied to. I don't think that they're saying that there's actually an extra planet. I think this is something else. And this might, there's loads of options, aren't there? It could be this is home. This is how this is once you've got home. It could simply be that this was space platforms and they're hiding the icon for space platforms for some reason. What else could it be? It could be that this is Nauvis underwater. We're getting an extra surface in Nauvis. It could be that it's the orbit. It could be Nauvis orbit as a special thing. So there's all sorts of options there. But I just thought it was very interesting that we've got a Compilertron and it isn't blurred. To me, it looks like it's probably been slapped over the top to hide something, but it could just be a placeholder icon, and they blurred it to avoid confusing us. Obviously, Compilertron's not really in the game currently. You see how this is a slightly lighter grey? Because I think that's and then you got this big chunky boy. I think that's the ramp. And I think this is the elevated rail and it shows it in a slightly different colour. And then these are the supports. So, you can sort of, it's interesting how easy to tell it is. But these are the sort of, they're using bridges extensively, basically, in order to massively increase throughput, presumably, because this is showing, essentially, trains stacking here. But whether they're stacking, they must be stacking to go in, but whether that's, coming in from the high rail or coming in from the low rail would kind of depend on it, whether it's a left-hand drive or right-hand drive. But they're clearly sending trains out on one level and bringing them in on another in order to increase the throughput. And it's pretty much what we saw on that, that one where we had the weirdly, mysteriously disappearing, colour-changing trains, and that's exactly what this is doing. So it's just a little thing on the video where they're doing the rail deconstruction. If we zoom in, it won't let me do it any further. If we zoom in as much as I can, this blueprint here, what's that showing? Because I don't recognise that as a way of laying out a blueprint. What happens when you do blueprints? Because you can do, this BG, whatever that's doing, BBG2 or whatever, and also these ones here. When you have a single icon, it just fills the whole thing. When you have 2 icons, it puts it together, and when you have 3 or 4 icons, it puts them into this square pattern. And that's just automatic. In one of the things Dyson Sphere program has, it has the ability to, have them big and small, and you can adjust it. But for Factorio, it's just fixed, right? Which then implies that this, the T, is a single thing. So what is it? Because I don't know of anything that will just do a T like that. And maybe it's just I've, completely, there's something obvious everyone knows about that I've just, never really realised or never seen. But what is that T? Because it's not a letter T. It's a cross of some description. Or maybe it's an icon that you can select, that is T-shirt. I don't recognise it. So what is it? What's there? Is that hidden? Or is that some new way of, flagging blueprints? Or what? Don't know. It's an interesting little thing. Something that is different on this is this writing area here. There's a couple of possibilities what it might be, and what I was thinking it could be, is that currently when you do tagging and pinging, they bring up separate menus and you sort of write in whatever you want to do or put an icon or what have you, and then you apply them on the map view. I wondered if this is a way of like a rework to it, because this is this pencil icon is usually where you can type something in, so you can click on that and do that. And they've written silos, which to me is the rocket silos, which is I think relates to these things in the middle here, where it's got home as the station name. And I think maybe it's a way of adding the tags that's a bit more efficient. So you just click that, you write silos, and then you hit add tag, and then it lets you put the tag on maybe, or lets you ping, and it just it captures that thing there. Another option is that it's a way of filtering things, that maybe you've put lots of tags on and you can search for silos. I don't quite know how that would work, because there's no search icon, and usually when you search for things you have the magnifying glass icon. So yeah, I don't know exactly what's going on here. It's interesting. As I say, and my thought was that you tag this, add that, so you just type out silos, add tag, and you can just plop it on when you press the add tag button, rather than having a separate menu. But yeah, I'd be fascinated to know what that means. There is also a difference here. So this icon, can we zoom right in on that again? This icon is cliffs by the looks of things. So you've got a tree. This is like a remove all clutter type deconstruction planner. But we don't have black cliffs in normal Factorio. So what I'm actually wondering is that this might be like one of the cliffs on another planet. The only reason I could think it would be like separate as such is that it perhaps is difficult to deconstruct. It requires a different thing to deconstruct. So this might be granite cliffs, and they require a super cliff explosive to remove. I'm hoping that isn't the case, because cliffs are just a pain in the bum no matter what. So I'm just hoping that that's just like they need a separate icon to make it clear that you can clear them. It also makes me wonder again, and I say going off into mad speculation, that we're getting some underwater thing, and that perhaps these are underwater cliffs, and that's why they're different and they require a different explosive to get rid of. Again, mad speculation there. It is nice, though, that we're getting some way of just flagging quality on the blueprints, so you don't have to find the level 2, quality 2 rather, of each of these icons. You can just put it on as a generic thing on the blueprint. So this is my level 2, quality 2 rather, blueprint, versus that one, which is the normal quality blueprint. There is also something here that doesn't quite make sense. Over here this is the icon for uranium, okay, and it is visually distinct from the icon for stone, for example. So it has this sort of more jaggedy appearance, and this icon over here appears to be the same but a different color. So what's going on there? So this is the icon for iron ore, and notice it's a different shape as well to both the stone and the uranium. Oh, and in fact, there's that same icon repeated as well. So this is copper ore. So this is really spiking like uranium, and it's repeated there as well. It does look the same, but it's desaturated. So what's going on? Why is that? I don't recognise that icon from the game, basically. Now, is that, some different change to the way that uranium is processed, and you now get depleted uranium is done in a different way or something? But why would it be coming into? You see the way these are coming into. These appear to be coming into smelting arrays because you've got, iron ore, copper ore, whatever this new ore is. These look a bit like they would be smelting arrays, beacon smelting arrays. So what is that icon? Because it's there twice. I hadn't realised it was there twice. I'd spotted it in that one once. But, it's there twice. And it looks like that one. So it feels like it would be a placeholder. And, they've just desaturated it to make it distinct while they're playing with it. But we don't have that coloured uranium icon in the game. Unless I'm going mad, and we do. And I've just completely forgotten about it. But I don't recognise that icon from the game. I hope you enjoyed today's Friday Facts video, and you might consider coming back for another one. If you want to chat about the latest Friday Facts, then you can find me live streaming Factorio every Saturday over on my Twitch channel at Trismegistus. Thanks for watching. Cheers. We love Bluepring.